Welcome, everyone, to What the Force. I'm Marie Claire.
And I'm Missy.
And we are your meta-mythic masters, and you are all our acolytes. And we are covering Star Wars The Acolyte from a meta-mythic folklore and fairy tale perspective. Just as a reminder, you can like and subscribe everywhere you find this to help you keep up with the show. You can also support the show directly by sharing it out with your friends who are like, why did this affect me so much? Well, Marie Claire and Missy can tell you. We are going to dig deep into episode 5, Night. But first, we have comments and questions.
So many. Oddly enough, this episode inspired a lot of conversation. So thank you so much for all of your questions and comments. Clearly, this is a hot topic. So
it is a hot topic. You know, and it's funny. I actually tweeted out that we were due for an apotheosis moment soon. And we got a lot in the last little bit. So I'm excited to kind of talk about what that is and how that affects us as the audience in a little bit. But first, we actually had two people who had kind of the same question. So I think I'll read the first one, but they were both, calling them out, Sun Jung Kim 2, as well as Travis T58631218, who I know is not a real person and a bot. A good friend of the show. It seems like, I got one. What are your thoughts on the decision to kill off Jecki and Yord? I'm torn on this one. On one hand, the deaths raise the stakes in the drama and don't feel cheap. But on the other hand, it's probably two of the most potentially interesting growths. Oh, those two probably had potentially the most interesting growths if they had lived. Yeah.
Yep.
That one's hard because I liked both of those characters a lot. Actually, Jecki surprised me probably the most.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I have the opposite. I was more surprised by Yord. Yeah. So here's what happened. So I know that we've talked a lot, obviously, about how we were expecting Soul to die, death of the mentor, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But there was a point last week where I was kind of mulling it over. And I thought, this show is very critical of the Jedi.
Mm-hmm.
And wouldn't it be interesting if it was Jecki, the Padawan, rather than Soul, the Master?
Yeah.
Because that would make the point that, the Jedi have failed and they bring these children to ruin. Mm-hmm. And so what's interesting is not only did that happen, but it even gets called out in the text.
Yeah, it does.
Because Soul says she was a child and Chimera goes, well, you brought her here.
Yeah.
Like, this is your fault. And so I was not as shocked by Jecki. Disappointed, obviously, because I love the character, but it was very appropriate for the story they're telling, I think. And then when it happened with Yord, that one I did gasp at for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Totally
that was very
gasped.
shocking.
It was very shocking because you don't normally, you expect the big shocking death, but you don't expect it to be followed up by another big shocking death, right? That's not typical. So, I was shocked, but I felt the same way about it. It drives that point home. Yord is very young. He's her childhood
friend. That's also really important.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like,
yeah. Oh, sorry, finish.
No, but So I think that the thing is was there potential for both of those characters? Of course. But we have to remember the story that they're telling.
Yes.
And the story that they're telling, it's May's story, it's Osha's story, and it is very critical of the Jedi. And so all decisions made in this episode are in service of that story and that message.
Yes. And it's May's story and it's Osha's story, but a lot of the story is actually, even though she's one of the most passive characters we've had in Star Wars television, it's primarily from Osha's lens.
Yes.
This episode,
mostly her perspective.
Her perspective. So we're looking through her eyes, much like we look through Luke Skywalker's eyes in the original trilogy most of the time. And I'm not going to answer the question right now, but Jeki and Yord represented something to Osha's ego. They represented archetypes for her personally. And as we get to their deaths in the episode, I'll talk about what is being taken away and why a little bit. Because like, I'm not saying that like death isn't bad in like death happens in fictional narratives, and sometimes it feels very pointless and just because somebody wanted to do a shock value. But I actually do think that there was a purpose to these deaths, and it sucks because I loved both of these characters. Like they had fandoms already around them, and Jeki herself as a character and the actress Daphne who played her filled her with life.
Yeah, I agree. So I loved the characters. I'm sad to see them go. But, you know, I was chatting with someone who hasn't been watching the show, but they asked, oh, I'm seeing a lot of chatter. What's going on? And I was like, oh, you know, like they killed off some major characters. And he goes, oh, so it's like a red wedding. And I was like,
yeah.
I mean, yeah, but it's
a
like,
lot of people have been comparing it to George R.R. Martin and the Red Wedding.
It's not the same.
I don't feel like it's the same. And I think that's...
It's not.
It's just not, because the Red Wedding was filled with terrible people who all got comeuppance, and these people were kind of innocent.
Well, some of the people in the Red Wedding were not terrible and were innocent. But here's the thing, is that the reason people often are frustrated with George R.R. Martin is, with a couple of notable exceptions, Ned Stark being the most obvious one, a lot of those deaths are only for shock value, and they do cut off, you know, story arcs like right at the knees and everything. Like, so you will invest in this character's journey and then they'll die, and then the threads aren't really picked up from that. And so you sort of are left going, why did I bother with these characters? And to your point, the thing about Jeki and Yord is that they serve a specific role for Osha. And so their deaths are consequential. We haven't been asked to invest in those characters in order to get nothing for it. We've been asked to invest in those characters because their loss is going to have significant consequence for Osha.
Exactly. And they were in some ways helping her not individuate and grow.
Yeah, absolutely. Even in this episode, like,
Yord was like entirely acting as an authority figure and saying, he literally picks her up at one point.
He literally picks her up again.
Carries her away. Like,
yes,
she's
always being carried.
She's
always
being carried.
Always.
Like, yeah. So like they were standing in the way. They were literally stopping her from going through her own threshold, her own initiation, her own journey, her own transformation, and actually growing up. And I have theories on why they were standing in the way. And it all has to do with actually probably how powerful her and May are together and apart and all of those things. Right. So, I mean, it's hard when we deal with a week-to-week show to say trust the storytellers, but there are reasons why we were emotionally invested in these characters.
Yeah. Yeah. And I respect anybody's, you know, emotional reaction to this. Like, obviously it was a really intense episode. But that said, I found that once I got past my initial shock, I was so excited because of what it meant about where they're going with this and the story they're telling. And I was particularly pleased to find that we were right about a lot of the thematic stuff. So I'm sorry to see those characters go, but man, you know, they went out with a bang, and their deaths are going to reverberate through the remainder of this story.
And I don't think that these lightsaber battles in this episode will ever be forgotten.
Oh, they're so great. I know that people love to go, oh, the choreography, but like, for real, the choreography was amazing. It was fantastic. I had a blast watching these.
This is all sort like Para, who was one of our like core people that we hung out with during Willow. He said the rule of cool has won. And I agree, which is like, if it's cool, let's do it. And regardless of whether people think it's realistic, if it looks cool, it's like, it is like, you know, the Kung Fu movie analogy, make it look cool. Yeah. And this entire thing was so cool.
It was really rad. It was, I had such fun watching it. I enjoyed watching it a second time. I will absolutely go back and watch it again. Yeah, it's a very satisfying Star Wars experience in a weird way.
It is. Yeah. No, I actually plan on rewatching it before the next episode.
Same.
Which is interesting. All right, next question. Michael Ambrose from Blue Sky said, what do you think of the eclipse symbolism in the confrontation between soul and chimera? Between these two episodes, the closer soul, light, comes to the confrontation, chimera, dark moon, the light diminishes. And then the night is with it. Great change. When soul and chimera are separated, the sunlight returns with the dawn, bringing the light to the new changed world. Osha and May are on opposite sides of the eclipse too, with May with soul and Osha with chimera.
Yes.
No notes. Perfect.
Yeah. It's spot on. I totally
what
agree.
Do we think? We agree.
I think, you know, we think we love that everybody's paying attention to eclipse imagery. So
yeah, we love our listeners and that they are also picking up on the symbolism and motifs.
Yeah, there's so many great things with obviously day and night, the titles of the episodes, but you know, just all that eclipse and imagery, sun, moon, you know, the fact that the thing about eclipse is that it's just a moment in time, and then those celestial bodies pass by one another and the story continues. And so that's, you know, another important aspect of this.
All right, next question. The liminal zone, who was also with us with Willow. It's like we're getting the gang back together.
Oh, reunion.
Can you walk me through the mythic ways and examples of when a damsel breaks to become a heroine or a vixen?
I am just so glad you asked this question.
So a heroine is all about, again, we talked about individualization. So becoming an individual against the authority that they're surrounded with and adopting the piece of the authority that they need to keep to protect others around them, thus becoming a heroine, embracing their own power to be able to do so. But it's often in opposition to authority or a predator who is hunting them in a very seductive way to control that power.
Right. And that's how they become a heroine. I think to this point about how does a damsel become a vixen? And this is
it's a negative slide.
And I think it's going to become really relevant really soon. But yeah, basically the gist of it is that if the damsel absolutely just refuses to individuate, just is fighting it with everything she has, she will eventually fall into the vixen role.
And because she picks up the aggressive need to survive. The vixen is defined by, it's an archetype of survival, right? So we associate it with, the whores of the world or the aggressive feminine fatales of the world, right? We associate it with that, but they're doing what they need to do to survive because it is life or death for them.
Yeah.
That's the key. It is about survival. We shouldn't judge the vixen. She is just doing what she needs to do to get through the day.
Yeah, and that's why like Reva's still one of my favorite vixens in Star Wars. Yeah, I love her. And the reason is because you understand completely why she is in that role and how she got there. It is a matter of survival, you know, like she is in a world that already tried to destroy her once. She knows it's going to try again. And so what she sees is, you know, one, I got to be aggressive. And two, I have to serve the powers that be because otherwise they are a threat to me. And she has to serve the authority, serve the predator, or it will be a threat. Yeah.
And if you dig deep enough into canon and like, or listen to Dooku Jedi Lost by Cavan Scott, you hear why Ventress became a vixen who was previously a maiden and then a damsel as a captured maiden.
Yep. Yeah.
So
exactly.
The slide is you're being tortured all the time with pain. And so you decide to work for the predator instead of die.
Yep.
Right?
Exactly.
That's how it happens.
Yeah.
And yeah, with that comes particular character traits that we're very used to seeing within our fiction.
Right. But I think this is really important because I actually strongly feel after watching this episode that these two characters are headed in very particular directions.
You mean Marie-Claire was right again?
I think Marie-Claire was right again. I mean, not that I'm surprised, but yeah, absolutely.
My hit ratio is pretty good.
It's pretty good. It was just funny because like when I got to the end of the episode, I was like, dang it, Marie-Claire called it. It's like she called it.
I have to apologize to Jord halfway through the episode.
Oh no.
I let Missy lead me astray. I didn't think you were evil, and then
Listen. He was sus. I'm going to give it to him. And I will say it's a little heartbreaking in this episode. He's a cop right up to the very last second. Literally. Right up to the very last
Such a
second.
cop.
He never gets past that, and it's kind of heartbreaking.
It really is. Harris V9. Do you too believe this episode makes it more or less likely that Chimera is a Sith apprentice in the rule of two situation?
You guys can't see me, but like, I'm just so excited. Like, this is all just thrilling to me. I love this. I think he is absolutely the master in the rule of two situation. I think
really,
I do. And I think the fact that he is attempting to take on a new apprentice is very relevant. I think that Osha's ultimately going to attempt to kill him, whether she succeeds or not, TBD. But I think that may happen.
Interesting. That is so like reverse from what, because people are leaning into legends and they're like,
yeah,
you know, like all of these masters, and he shows like the traits of these masters and things like that. And so they're like, he must be one of the apprentices that has gone by the wayside, or he's like an offshoot that shot off and created like the Knights of Ren or something like that, right? Which I think is all cool possibilities. There are some cool things that I love about Chimera, which is that he fights like he's the underdog, which is exactly what we heard from Leslie, that she wanted to talk about the dark side being the underdog. And he's just brutal. He's just like fighting like a cornered, you know, animal, just absolutely fighting for his survival.
Yeah, well, and he takes the kill shot when he can.
Exactly.
And he doesn't, it's not like playing with his food before he literally just
or Palpatine, who plays like the ancient long game,
right?
You know,
yeah.
like
or Palpatine, who sits there monologuing about how this is your destiny for like hours before he finally attempts to kill you. Like Chimera's just like, no, I see my opening, I kill you. Like
I kill you. That's it. And he's lonely, which is so fascinating because the dark side is often like. It often is characterized by this hunger, by being lonely, by wanting companionship in the dark. The dark side is lonely, so it wants somebody to stick into the dark side and wrap in the dark side with you, so you're not alone in the darkness. And given that, I think he's alone. And I don't know if that means he's a master
he wants to be. He aspires to be. That's what I mean.
But I don't know if he's like a Sith yet. Cause like I don't think he's like the Sith we think of, if that makes sense. I don't think that I think he's something else. He just is okay with the name because the Jedi don't have any other name for it.
Well, and what he said was, the Jedi make the rules, right?
Right.
Like he says that. So when I say I think he's the Sith Master, what I mean is to the extent that he's going to match our idea as the audience of what a Sith is, I think that he is a lone Darksider.
Yes.
Who, to your point, craves companionship and specifically wants an apprentice or an acolyte that he can control.
Yes.
He wants that. That is the way he understands companionship, is control. That is what he thinks of it as. And so what I mean is I think that in any sort of rule of two arrangement, he's going to play the role of the master. What I don't believe is that there is another big bad somewhere above or behind him. I do not think that he is serving someone else.
You think he's
I
alone?
think he's
alone too. I
think he's it.
I don't think that there's anybody else other than him, other than the people he collects, which are servants of a sort, right? Not his henchmen, right?
Right.
I still think there's an outside chance that it'll be Osha and May and him at the end. And
it's possible.
Because of threes.
Yes. And threes are all over this episode again.
Yeah. And threes are all over the episode. And so there's an outside, I'm calling it my dark horse chance of this being that Osha and May and Kaimir together end this season.
Interesting.
I don't know, though.
I think it's possible. I don't think so, just because I think at least one of the twins is going to manage individuation. My money's on May right now.
Yeah. I mean, she's the closest.
Right. Exactly.
You know.
Yeah. So we'll see. We'll see. But like,
she was like a healed maiden half this episode, whereas
I know,
like Osha had like a hot second of maiden.
Yeah.
We'll get into that.
You'll have to tell me where you saw it, because I found myself thoroughly put out that I thought she was like still a damsel all the way through. I was like, come on, girl, work with me here.
Yeah. Dragon Debbie, will we find out that Soul and Kaimir know each other, or what the reality of happened on Brendox in the next episodes? It seems like that knowledge could be used to trigger Osha's darkness. On a side note, I'm sad Jackie died. We don't get enough female friendships in Star Wars. I agree.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about this, because I actually absolutely think this is what's going to happen, and it was part of my speculation points at the bottom of the episode, but let's talk about it now. What is going to happen is it is obvious to me that Osha has had her memories altered in some ways, and I think it actually might be theoretical that she actually started the fire and she has more dark side than we give her credit for, and she has been suppressed mentally and emotionally as a damsel by the Jedi.
Yep. So I have started to lean in the same direction.
KOTOR.
Yep.
Like how Revan is stripped of their memories at the start of KOTOR, and you have to discover what the Jedi did to you, basically. And we know Leslie is a big fan of KOTOR.
Yeah, so that's right.
Let's just talk about what that does to you emotionally when you find out that you have been essentially stripped away of something that is so fundamental. Anybody seen Inside Out 2 recently? Okay, remember when they were throwing all the bad memories into the abyss? And then suddenly all of those bad memories came back and you realized you actually have darkness in you and failure and all of these bad things? Well, you need to figure out a way to accept all of that all at the same time. And sometimes it's not so pretty, and sometimes you cry and you snot out your nose, and sometimes you're really mean to people you love.
I just think, like, you know, we keep talking about how the twins are one. They are different aspects of a single psyche. And May being the one who has taken all the blame for the fire, etc., blah, 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 blah. That, I think, is Osha repressing the part of her that is responsible for what happened.
Yeah, I feel like potentially there was something like they didn't allow her to go. And then she did something.
Yep. Or something.
And, yeah. And like the fact that the ombre moths look exactly like the little butterflies like, on the planet. Like there's things like psychologically, if this was a dream, we would be like, whoa, wait a second, what does that mean? But because it's a show, we don't even question.
Right.
You know, so I know it's going to be revealed. I kind of think it would be super sexy if Kaimir was like, oh, let me show you the way. And then it also kind of unlocked something in him too, because that would be really sexy.
Well, it would. There's a lot of room for things they're going to do there. But ultimately, I think what's going to happen is he is going to find a way to reveal to her what happened, to unlock certain memories, etc. And yeah, it's going to break her in many ways, and very likely will push her toward the dark.
Yep. We're here for it.
Oh, I'm excited.
as your mythical masters, we are here for it.
Yes.
Jesse M. Garrett. M.E. Garrett. Garrett. Do you think we're going to see any Sith planets in the next episode with Kaimir and Osha? You're more excited about this question than me.
I am.
I'm
just because
I like Korriban.
Yeah. I don't think they will, sadly. I don't think they will, sadly, and I think that's primarily a budget thing. I think that, they're not going to give us the cool weird planets. But I kind of wish they would, because I absolutely loved the Sith temples in Rebels. It was some of my favorite stuff about Rebels. It was so cool and creepy and like mystical, and it is amazing. And it didn't hurt that some of the best action in that show happened in those places too. So it was fantastic.
Let me tell you symbolically where it's going to be. It's going to be in the underworld. So it's going to be underground or in a dark place.
Yep.
Easy.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's going to be in the underworld. That has to happen.
Yes.
It cannot be in the light of day.
Yep.
He drags her back to his cave.
Yes. Well, and that's important too, because again, consider where, and we'll talk about this, but this is where she is in this story. This is the point at which she has been captured by the damsel has been captured by the predator. And therefore, what happens next? He takes her back to his dark and dreary castle.
And
that's what he does.
To her, and he tries to convince her to love him in her own way as a light side person, and to show her darkness so that they can be one.
Yep.
With that, let's dig into themes and mythic motifs, including Dark Union.
Aha! Dark Union. You were right again.
Oh my goodness. Do I ever get sick? No, my ego. Okay, so it's been a hot minute since I've talked about Dark Union on a podcast for Star Wars. We talked a little bit about it with regards to Willow. If you love Willow, go back and listen to those episodes, because they were killer. Dark Union is primarily an anti-alchemical, one-sided event. It subsumes the person's power and energy for the co-opter. Marie-Louise von Franz says, in alchemical symbolism, the female figure, or internalized figure, is often first married to the wrong kind of man. It is a heroic deed to separate the couple. So we see this in media all the time. Rey and Palpatine. He was like, hey, Rey, join me. I want to possess your body with all of the past memories of all these Sith. And she was like, ew, I've got my Kylo/Ben Solo. Anakin and Palpatine entered into a full Dark Union that lasted many decades.
Yep.
That is all bad Sith master-apprentice relationships. They are all Dark Unions. Tristan and Isolde and King Mark. King Mark and Isolde is the formative Dark Union that we talk about when it comes to Campbell. And Tristan breaking them up with the potion that induces love. He's like, he basically talks about how he's damned for loving Isolde, but it is what he must do, betraying Mark. Because Mark is wrong for Isolde. And Bowser, Princess Peach, and Mario. Bowser desires Princess Peach for some reason. I'm sure if you think about it, you can think about these weird triangles that happen all over the place. But what does this mean for our story? There is going to be a correct union for Osha, who is our primary damsel, who is captured in this with our predator. And that correct union is going to be with her sister, May.
Yep, because they are the dyad in this story.
Yes.
And they belong together, and they can only create something new if they are together. As long as Osha or May is with Chimere, they cannot create anything new, because he is using their power. He's sucking the power from them in a sense.
It's very vampiric, yeah.
Yes, it's like a vampire, exactly. So it's important to note that, like, no matter how sexy it might be, the purpose of the story is this is wrong for her. This is wrong for them. He is the predator. He only eats.
Yeah.
He does not
consumes.
Create. He only consumes.
And in a relationship between the two of them, unless for some reason the archetypes were changed, but he would have to fall and fail and all sorts of stuff to have his archetype to change. It's a one-sided relationship always. He's going to be sucking her dry. That's like literally.
And I want to compare this briefly to real life. This is like having a partner who expects you to do everything and doesn't contribute themselves in any way. And ultimately, many people will end up leaving those relationships, learning from them, of course, and then finding someone who meets them as an equal. And this is very important. So that's what these stories teach us, at least from a relationship perspective. And then obviously to your point about, the predator being an aspect of the psyche.
Yeah.
It is, if you are always under the power of the predator, which is maybe it's your doubts in your mind telling you that you can't do something, or maybe it's the part of you that can't say no to any requests. So you say yes to everything. And so
then
you just
you're always drained of energy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You're drained of energy. Right. All of that kind of stuff. The part of you that says, I don't have time to create something, so I'm not going to do that. And then you never are doing anything for your own soul. Though that is what the predator is in your psyche. And ultimately you have to learn that is destroying you, that it's not a healthy union. And you have to break away from that predator or even destroy it completely so that you can be free and be fruitful.
And we talked about Bluebeard previously, which is really important because Bluebeard is really important to the heroine's journey, specifically because he is the human form, but monster underneath. The human is the mask, right? And he absolutely is a perfect version of a predator for our use here. Chimere had the human mask with May and the monster when the darkness set. When we see this in fiction, when we see the predator, it's because we don't trust our own power. We don't trust our own instincts. We're naive and we trust what others are telling us is true. And in some ways it's like, no, don't go look in that door, right? For Bluebeard. And we get it called out in the text how he's Bluebeard in this episode. When he says you didn't see it was me, like you didn't
even
see
deep down,
you didn't see I was the monster all along. Like it's a taunt because May wasn't leaning into her instinctual self and trusting her own feelings and her own senses and her own power.
Yeah.
And this is different than the animal husband, which I've talked about with regards to Raylo with Cupid and Psyche. Especially because the monster is on the outside in that situation. The monster is the mask and the true self is underneath. So that's like Beauty and the Beast, etc. Sometimes they blend these two stories together and they use both. That's really important because they sometimes do a little column A and then they resolve like an animal husband. But I do not think that is what is happening in this season.
Yep. I agree. I don't think that's what they're doing in this season. Do they have room to do it in future seasons? Yeah, maybe if they choose to take it in that direction. But I don't think that's at all what is happening here. And the reason is because of the fact that the story is Osha's and May's. It is the twins. It is the dyad. It is their story. And Chimere is not the resolution of that.
No.
He is the obstacle to be overcome. He is the predator. He does not serve a role as human for them.
No, he is supposed to be the monster and he's supposed to be seductive and he's supposed to be the thing that waylays them for a while on their own individuation.
Yeah. Not everything that is seductive is also good for us. Like we love seduction around here. We're very, we love that kind of stuff. And we're pro-villain. We like the dark, sexy characters. We're all about that. But in terms of, the purpose of this story. Yeah,
this isn't Raylo.
This is not at all. No. If you're seeing parallels, that's fine. Okay. Again, like we said, that there's plenty of overlap between these stories. But I think
sometimes they're both, right? Sometimes the predator turns into the animal husband. He is a predator for a little while, and then he's an animal husband. We both think, just given that it's one season, we don't think that's what's going to happen this season. And if they give us more time, we'll see.
Yeah, There's always room to do it in the future, depending on where they end the story this year. So
exactly.
We'll see.
House of Atreus, another theme.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so this is the thing, right? Again, as upsetting as aspects of this episode were, I was so insanely excited to be like, it's House of Atreus. We did an entire episode of this. Plus, we talked about it a bunch during Following Willow. Da 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 da. And they keep coming back to it. And
it's because the Jedi are so tied to it.
I know. And like, I have mixed feelings because on the one hand, I'm like, yes, we called it. And on the other hand, I'm like, will Star Wars ever be free from this curse? I don't know. So again, House of Atreus, for anyone who hasn't listened to that episode, and I do recommend it because it's going to give so much context for this show. But it's the story of this family that is constantly killing or even eating or serving to someone else to eat their own children. So they're constantly consuming their own children. And so it's this curse, and it is handed down through the generations until ultimately somebody breaks the curse by atoning and receiving forgiveness and absolution. And what we have talked about
and for the community to give them kindness in return to forgive them.
Yes, exactly. And so what we have talked about is how there have been points where this has happened. This breaking of the curse has happened. Particularly Return of the Jedi, of course, is the most notable.
Yeah.
Right. But for the most part, a lot of the stories in Star Wars are about this curse being perpetuated. And that is what happens here. Jeki, Yord, and Osha are the children of the Jedi Order. And the Jedi Order has consumed them. Granted, Osha's still alive, but still, she's still been, in a sense, spiritually consumed by the Jedi. Jeki and Yord are dead because of the Jedi. Like, it is very much their fault. The Jedi, consume children. It is what they do. Think of how all of the, the Padawans like Ahsoka are soldiers, child soldiers during the Clone Wars and everything. This is a consumption of children. These kids called out in the episode, basically, right? These children were brought to this place where the Predator was and effectively served up to him. That is what happened here. And again, to your point, he calls them out on this.
Bull in Theseus and the Minotaur, right? Like,
right.
That is the curse as well, just in a different play out.
Yes, exactly. So this is really important. That is what happened here. And that's why it's so important to understand why Jeki and Yord died in this episode, because this is critical of the Jedi. This says the Jedi killed these people, cut them off in their youth.
Yeah. By basically saying, it's cool if children go and fight monsters.
Yeah, exactly. It's really
popular, I would say. Like, there are people out there that are quite struggling with this idea that the show is particularly critical of the Jedi. But I'm going to say George Lucas did it first.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm seeing that a lot. I agree. And granted, I'm not following the conversation, super closely, but what I've seen, people get very upset at this claim about the Jedi and the way they are about kids. But I think it just keeps cropping up over and over and over again. It's
definitely something that is a core value of Star Wars, that the Jedi were not good because they were institutionalized. And there are individual good Jedi who were good people like Soul for the most part. Although, what did you do, Soul? What did you do?
Yep. Right. What did you do?
What did you do? But, there are good people within the Jedi, but the institution itself is self-protecting at the sacrifice of the children. They are willing to cover up this scandal rather than have it leak to the Senate that there was any sort of problem.
Yeah, that's the thing. They had other options to address this problem. And what they decided to do instead was send a, covert outfit of young Jedi and Padawans to handle this. And keep in mind, the red shirt Jedi are all dead too. So and Soul was the oldest one there. So this is again, they served that younger generation up on a platter. They're gone now, and that's all on the Jedi. And so this is where I want to get to. In the story of the House of Atreus, one of the earlier manifestations of the curse is Atreus, the House of Atreus. This is his family, killing the sons of his brother Thyestes and serving them to him. And this perpetuates the curse. Well, one of Thyestes' sons survives, escapes. It's actually Aegisthus. And he eventually avenges Thyestes by killing Atreus. And then the surviving sons of Atreus overthrow and exile Thyestes. And so what I'm getting at here is that somebody in this bloodbath of the sort of children of Soul, so to speak, survived. It's Osha. Osha is the surviving child. And now she may want revenge. Before, May wanted revenge. Now Osha may want revenge. And particularly, she may even want revenge against Soul when she finds out whatever it is that he did.
Yeah, so we don't know what happened 100%, and we're like, we have a bad feeling about this all the time.
Yeah, it's not feeling good. Yeah. But it's definitely it's interesting because it's showing how this curse is being perpetuated. Right? With every death, it just sort of begets more death. And I think that segues nicely into the next topic we want to cover, which is, and thank you so much to, let's see, High Springs again, I think.
For the Fisher King. No.
Yeah. No, wait, who brought this up?
This was actually a comment on our last video.
Oh,
and I have to look up who it is, but you talk about the Fisher King and then I'll give you cred.
Yeah, so this is relevant because the Fisher King is a story about how the king, it's an Arthurian legend, and the king is wounded. The king is sick. And because the king is wounded, the kingdom is wounded. The kingdom is sick. And this is what is happening here, is that the Jedi are sick. They are wounded. And it's a moral wound usually in the story, is there's some kind of moral failing that causes this wound to occur. And so that means the galaxy is sick because the Jedi are sick. And specifically the way we know that they're pulling on this is thigh wound. So normally in the story, it's a thigh wound on the king. And that is symbolically like castrating him, basically. That's what that is. And this is important because, again, like when that happens, they cannot create, they cannot grow. And this is what is happening to the Jedi. They're in this defensive posture. They consume children, but they're not creating anything, right? And so they are effectively impotent in many ways. And we know that's also the position they're in when the prequels begin. And so we see this thigh wound symbolism happening where Yord is wounded in the thigh early in the episode. Jackie is wounded in the thigh later in the episode. And then they both die. So they both end up receiving the wound, the symbolic wound of the Jedi. And then they die for it because the kingdom is sick.
Also wounded in the leg.
That's right. That's right. You're right. That happened too. So this is really important because what it tells us is that this story is about how the Jedi fell before the rise of the Chosen One, i.e. Anakin/Luke.
Yeah. So this is actually JIWECAD756 on YouTube. And actually we were talking more in relation to Anakin's relationship to the universe and how it relates to the Fisher King trope, which I think is a completely valid way to look at it because of how it relates to the House of Atreus, which we've talked more about how Anakin relates to the House of Atreus than necessarily the Fisher King, but the Fisher King is something that is happening. There's tons of Mandalorian Fisher King symbolism. His armor actually has a wounded thigh plate. Like, it is something that also flows through Star Wars in a similar way, like the House of Atreus.
Yes. And so they mean very similar things. Basically, when you see this wound, it means the king is sick and therefore the kingdom is sick. And in this case, it means the Jedi are sick and therefore the galaxy is sick. Like and so that's what is happening here. And what this is doing is setting up for the events of the prequels. Like we talked about this a couple episodes ago. We know that where this story is headed is talking about, hey, how, 100 years in the past, how did the Jedi go from their High Republic era into this state of collapse that they're in by the time that Phantom Menace occurs?
Yes. It's, and I think people are upset that like they're talking about the Jedi not being that great like now before the Republic falls. But I'm sorry to tell you that empires fall hundreds of years before they actually disintegrate. Yeah,
it doesn't happen overnight. I think that rather famously, the Roman Empire, like if you look at when the Republic fell versus the Empire fell, like there's a solid couple hundred years in there.
It's like 400 years.
Yeah, exactly. So it's, this is important. Like it's doing such a good job of what we talk about all the time, which is that micro macro, right? It's showing how this small scale story between just a handful of people illustrates what is happening in the galaxy at large. And so that's really important.
So George Lucas, like I did an entire Patreon post on the micro and the macro and the predator and like how you can tell. And I went on and on about how like what the predator is. And if you're looking for excellent bonus content, at least while I have time, I am doing it per episode. I'm like my additional thoughts that are still left untouched, I throw onto the Patreon for my patrons. I love you guys.
And in my completely unbiased opinion, I think Marie Claire has been in top form on her Patreon lately. So
people didn't know that I wrote like close to 20,000 words on Ahsoka.
Really?
And it's nowhere out there on the internet, but in my Patreon.
And it's awesome.
You want to understand what's going on in Ahsoka? I have the manual for you. 20,000 words of it. So let's talk about the heroine's journey, because I think it's important to talk about it in relation to the fact that this is also Osha and May's journey. And they both experience spiritual aridity and death. And then they have an apotheosis moment together, which is really wonderful, and it doesn't last long.
Nope.
So we'll go into that when it happens in there. But the heroine's journey, of course, is written by Maureen Murdoch. You can pick it up. It is from a counseling psychology perspective. She was a Jungian psychologist, but she wanted to take the lens that Joseph Campbell wrote his stories and apply it to more feminine motifs and symbolism that speak more to her clientele. The cool thing about the heroine's journey is it has been pretty much entirely fed through the Disney machine, and it's one of the reasons why Frozen and Frozen 2 speak so well to some people internally.
Yeah, and Moana
as well. It was fed into and basically producers were asked to read it.
Yeah.
And they read it maybe, or they didn't. And we get more feminine stories out of that.
And I think that the heroine's journey makes a really excellent companion to Women Who Run with the Wolves, because one thing we've talked before about it is that the heroine's journey is about a woman navigating, or femme person navigating, patriarchy. And Women Who Run with the Wolves is, who is this woman divorced from patriarchy?
Yes.
Like, who is she independent of patriarchy? And that's very important too. And I think both of those perspectives really help us have this complete idea of, who we are, why these stories speak to us.
And it's one of the reasons I love Bell Hooks so much with The Will to Change, because she actually talks about not only what is masculinity under patriarchy and how to divorce yourself from it, but what does masculinity look like after patriarchy is done, or outside of patriarchy.
And that's what's interesting, is because one of the things we talked a lot about with Willow was how it was very much about the awakening the sleeping goddess, right? It was about sort of like becoming awake to this feminine power. And the part of the story they never got to, because they canceled the dang show and got rid of it, was the healing of the wounded masculine. But that was a necessary follow-up to that story. And what I find very interesting about this story is that it is similarly an awakening sleeping goddess story.
Goddesses, yeah.
And there's no evidence yet that they're going to have a healing of the wounded masculine, except possibly Soul. I could see Soul getting that.
Yeah.
But it would be very small scale and very quick. I don't think it would be a primary focus of the story.
And it could be something that they, again, approach and do in later seasons.
Yeah.
It sort of depends on what happens and if they get renewed or if they want to be renewed.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, please renew the show. Like, I'm just gonna say that now. Like, I'm just so tired of things I like getting canceled. So yeah, everyone just yell about it to your friends so that we can get it renewed. Okay.
Divine Twins. I swear we're almost done.
I know, we're so close. And this is really quick. This is not even a big thing, but we keep calling out Divine Twins, and every time I see something new about it, I want to bring it up. So I did just want to say, in this episode, or rather these two episodes, because of the way that May and Osha are dark and light, night and day, sun and moon, eclipse, etc., I wanted to mention that they reminded me of Apollo and Artemis, who were also divine twins, and Apollo represented sun and day and earth, land, and Artemis represented night, moon, and water. And interestingly, they were born on a floating island. And I want to remind everybody that in episode 3 on Brendock, we noted that little floating triangle at the top of the what was it? The fortress there. So the idea that this like cradle for them was this sort of floating island.
Space between, yeah.
Yeah, and their mother too, the Leto, she was actually banished for her relationship with Zeus. And so I like, we know that the witches were banished.
There's a lot
we
of
know
parallels.
that they did something that was considered dark that people were upset at them for. So there were a lot of parallels. I thought that was interesting. And I wanted to call it out.
Let's talk about hair cutting ever so briefly. Woo-hoo. It's, of course, you become a new you. It's a rebirth.
Yeah. And it's especially, again, we talk about how braids are being tied to something. May was tied to Chimere. Cutting her hair also cuts her ties to him.
Yeah. And draws her closer to his sister because then she looks more like her.
Exactly.
The parent trap of it all.
Yeah. Yes.
So the switchy switch, which is, induced by the hair cutting, the switching of twins, of course, is related to the eclipse symbolism and how they switched, which Marie Claire was right again.
Yes.
But this is how Osha is finally going to grow up. She is being given to the predator. And so she has no choice but to be faced with more consequences than always being protected by authority.
Yeah. Yeah. She's literally being forced into it.
And briefly before we get into the episode, I want to talk about apotheosis of media, because this is a thing that I talk about on the internet and I feel like nobody understands. And I have experienced it now in so many shows, and it's absolutely fascinating to me when it happens, when you see a fandom explode with energy. And so this is when you got the zoomies, when you got the jitters, when you got super excited, when your heart was palpitating because of the media that you were watching. It resonated in the same speaking consciousness of your brain. What your subconscious needed to hear, it spoke to. And that moment might change between people. In particular, I noticed it in episode 4 at the end, when Osha was faced with chimere, now that we know, in the mask, and the lightsaber raised between them. It was very phallic in its orientation, but they were both bathed in the red light. And that is an alchemical union, which is a union of opposites. In that moment, the character itself faced its worst nightmare and looked into the darkness. And we, as the audience, experienced that with the character. If we were going along for the ride, if we were bored, we weren't. But that's fine. Everybody's different. And if you connected with that character in that moment, if you were along for the ride, you experienced a sudden burst of energy. That happened again in this episode. And it might have been in several places, like during the lightsaber fights, when Chimere grabbed May with the grasp, when Osha and May hugged, when Chimere laid the cloak over Osha. There are several moments by which the symbolic alchemical union taking place overwrites our logical thinking, and we are part of the media. We experience a part of the elixir, and we are filled with energy. It's one of the most fascinating things I like to watch fandoms go through. This has happened in other sources of media, especially for Reylos. I would say that when Kylo and Rey were fighting in the forest, and he's like, "You need a teacher," and she was like, "The Force," and their faces were all lit up by lights. When he approaches her and she's in the like interrogation thing, and he's like, takes off his mask and he approaches her in that moment. When they hand touch in the hut, when they fight and he saves her and they fight in Snoke's boudoir, when they kiss in Tross, like there are Reylo apotheoses, and it makes undying loyalty to an experience.
Yeah.
So if you experience that, this has connected with you on a deep psychological level. Congratulations. Get some water. Go to the bathroom. Pause if you need to. Go do your dishes while you're listening to this. Get your dishes all ready, and we'll get into the episode. An hour in, and I'm sorry.
I knew it would happen.
I know this. We have a lot to talk about. I feel bad for the listeners, but no, I don't. Okay,
I don't feel bad. No, you guys, you love it. You know what you signed up for. Come on.
Just get some dishes, fold some laundry. I love you guys for doing that, for feeling productive while you're listening to us. All right, episode 5, Night. Osha awakens in the darkness, surrounded by the forest. Of course, this ties very much to the transformative motifs of being inside of the dark forest. This is a cocoon. She is a caterpillar waiting to be transformed, melted down into goo, which that kind of happens a little bit in this episode, which is great. A little bit. To be reborn. She starts to look for Pip and falls into this red dust and essentially and sees death kind of off to the side. So this, wherever we see this dust, it's like the blood of Bluebeard's key when you see the death of all the former brides.
Yeah, it's what happens when she opens that door. And in some versions of the story, she's so horrified that she faints and has to be like carried out. And so it's like the revelation of all of this death and the reality of who the predator is and what he's capable of, and the fact that she is not safe. That is an important moment in the Bluebeard tale.
We see a fully formed predator in the darkness killing, fighting in massive amounts of ways. And we see him deflecting things that should not be able to be deflected. And this is, of course, tied to a Legends concept, cortosis, which is a metal that I think people make. It's in Legends, but it was like reintroduced into canon in like New Dawn, but we've never seen it in live action.
I'll be honest, I didn't like that they didn't call it out. I don't care how clunky it would have been. I wanted somebody to just be
say
like,
what it was.
His helmet must be made of cortosis, because it just kept me guessing the whole episode, and
you had to read the like liner notes or like
yeah,
guess, or like,
and I found that annoying. So I'll be honest, I didn't love it because there was so much emphasis on how their sabers kept shorting out, and so I'm like working hard to figure out what that means. And in reality, it was just like a lore thing, and.
Well, and I actually think that there's like a symbolic reason that this is happening, because he himself, being a cornered animal, is all about deflecting psychologically. And he does it verbally the entire episode. So he is on maximum defense mode. He is strategically aggressive, but he is ultimately defensive. He hides his face for a reason. He doesn't allow anybody to know he exists. So he is this absolutely protected animal.
Yeah.
The stranger is fighting Yord, and he wounds his leg, like what we talked about, the Fisher King motif. And we see tons of Jedi death.
Yeah.
Osha steps in to try and shoot the stranger, but it doesn't affect him because of what he's wearing.
That's Osha's first aggressive action so far in the show. It's the first time we've seen her do something like that. And notably, it's not just about the helmet that her blast has no effect. It's also, again, she's not using her power. Yes. She is using this borrowed power. And so she needs to use her power in order to have an impact on him.
We cut to May, who looks around Kalnaka's place, realizing that everything is in danger, and collects his lightsaber. So this is arming yourself with a talisman, right? Lightsabers are talisman. They're also highly phallic, but we're not going to go into that in this moment. But it does represent the authority of the Jedi. So how Kaimir is bashing the lightsabers is doing exactly what he wants to do, which is interrupting the authority of the Jedi. It is interrupting this belief, because talismans often represent the faith in the institution or the belief. And that's why he's so on about killing a Jedi without a weapon, because it's like the idea is to interrupt and to stop them from, to break the mystique around the Jedi.
Yeah.
But she is temporarily owning the authority of the Jedi by taking the talisman.
Well, and she does it because she needs it. She sees it as the best way to protect herself. And what's so interesting, of course, is that she didn't take Indara's lightsaber as a trophy when she arguably had the right, because she killed her.
Yeah.
But she did not kill Kalnaka, but she did take his lightsaber in order to defend herself. So I thought that was fascinating.
So the stranger is bashing these lightsabers, interrupting their faith, and Osha is like being told to run. Run! And like literally it's like civilian to the ship by Soul, and then like civilian to the ship.
Yeah. But there's another
Yord.
Yeah, but there's another thing here before that happens. So the stranger throws the lightsaber as Osha runs. Soul deflects it, and it slices through 3 trees. Now, what did we say before? We said there are 3 symbolic children of Soul in this episode.
Yes,
it's
trees.
Jackie, Yord, and Osha. And because of his deflection, those 3 trees are killed. So this is foreshadowing what is going to happen here. And it, again, to your point about the predator deflects, but Soul is the mirror image of Kaimir. He also deflects. And every accusation that Soul makes in this episode against Kaimir turns back on him and is like, no, you. No, you. So this is.
And also, like, I want to point out, and it comes out later, but Soul is just as brutal as Kaimir.
He absolutely is.
Just as brutal and willing to kill. Like,
100%.
Like, okay.
But it's important.
Yeah, so civilian to the ship, and this is the first time we literally hear Osha be like, no, I want to help. Like, no, I want to do something.
Yeah, right.
But Yord is like, no, I'm going to literally catch Soul, shoving you to me. carried via the Force to Yord. Yord picks her up and carries her physically away like a damsel. This poor woman. And she's like, wait. I want to do something. And nobody listens to her because authority. But then we hear the coolest choral music kick in as Soul and Chimere, the stranger, enter into a duel. When we hear choral, it is absolutely the Force weighing in, much like the chorus of a Greek tragedy, saying that the outcome of this duel will determine the fate of somebody involved. So when we watched Duel of the Fates, the choral, Cora Ratuma, was like, who's going to raise Anakin? Because that's going to change the fate of the galaxy. I'm sorry, Obi-Wan. For this, this is who will get to Osha first. And because she is the main character of our story. And so I love May, but it's Osha May, not May Osha. And it is a challenge of the soul.
Yeah.
Right? It is the battle for Osha's soul in a way.
Yeah. Also, Marie Claire has an episode about the choral music in Star Wars, so go listen to that too. You do. You have a whole episode on that. I literally
forget how many cool things I've ever done.
It's a good one. It's another good one.
It's a really good one, and actually, it has a really awesome couple of guests. So I highly recommend that one as well if you want to learn more about choral in Star Wars. And then we have Basil and Yord, and I would like to formally apologize for being suspicious of both of you.
That said, he still's like, I will subdue you if I have to, Osha. Like, he's such a cop. Dude,
he's such a cop.
On. Like,
Soul
why?
Gave me an order. We have to go back. And Osha's like, no, we got to go back. Like, she's really trying. She is trying. She's not trying very hard, but she is like, she's protesting, right? And Osha keeps on trying to touch darkness. She's like, whoa, that's an Umbra moth. Whoa, like, where are we? And then we have Chimera the Stranger in the mask with the cool reverb. Master Soul, you don't remember me. And then Soul's like, I sense something familiar, right? So we start to get that, like, okay, there's more to this story that we don't know yet.
Right. We're going to get more origin for Chimera at some point.
Yeah. And Jackie and May have their fight. You're under arrest. She's also a cop.
Yes, she is. Baby cop. Look
and
what
she's
they
like,
did to
you're for the death of Master Indara and Master Torben and that fire that killed your family. And that's the thing that triggers May to fight back.
Yep.
She was like, you know, I did those other two things. But that third one.
But that one, that's not me.
That's not me. And so,
and
they fight.
She throws her dagger, which creates sparks, which is another form of fire. Woo-hoo. So again, her motif reappears there.
I was surprised we didn't get a fire in the forest.
Yeah.
Just as a side note. That's all.
You know what, though? I almost wonder. So forest fires are interesting symbolically because, like, they are total destruction. They are bad on the one hand, but on the other hand, they do tend to be cleansing fire, rebirth. Like, if you think of, like, Bambi.
We're not there yet. Yeah.
Right. Like, the end of that movie is all like, oh, look at all the regrowth and there's new babies and yay. You know, like, so I think that's probably why they didn't do it, is because they needed to keep us like firmly in the underworld for this entire episode.
Soul and the Stranger continue their fight. You trained May. Show me your face and let you read my thoughts. I love how like sort of like sassy he is.
Yep. Yeah. Well, and calling out exactly what Soul would do anyway.
No. I'm not going to play your games, Jedi. What master hides his face from his people? You tell me.
Okay, so the best part of that was I didn't have the captions on for the first time I watched through it. But when he said, what master hides his face from his pupil, I said, you tell me. And then he goes, you tell me. And I was like, called it. It was a perfect response. It was so appropriate.
And he's just basically just calling Soul a liar, right? He's hiding the truth. He is masking himself from Osha, right?
Yep. Yes,
and what really happened.
Yep.
Jackie is fighting May and screams. And so this is like to Osha, the call to adventure / initiation in that oh no, I actually have to go back. I am being called back into the dark forest.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And Yord and Osha have this like moment where Yord's like, he doesn't follow the rules of combat. The rules of combat. Like, and he's like, he gets into your head and he stays there. So of course we're kind of leaning into like mind powers, which might be a foreshadow for Osha and Chimera and maybe next episode. And Osha talks about how my mother could do that, get into a Jedi's head.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're all of the cool things that like Kylo could do are all kind of coming out a little bit, which is really cool.
Yeah. And it also does make me wonder, you know, I keep going back to her vision in the first episode where she saw the version of May that had the sort of glazed over black eyes, you know, which is what we saw happen to Torben later, and which, as she said, was something her mother could do. And so I keep going back to that and wondering if that's, again, referring to her memories not being accurate because she's had this kind of done to her on some level, you know. And who did it to her and how.
It's very symbolic of what happens to a feminine person in society. You're told to repress your darkness. You're told not to embrace your power. You're told to be a good girl, to comply to what society expects of you. So I worry how dark Osha might go once the truth is revealed.
I agree. I think we're likely to see
some darkness.
I think she's going to go to extremes. I think, you know, because there's a concept in animation. Because I studied animation early on in my career. There's a concept in animation of like, if you want to make an action really, really impactful, you don't worry about animating the action. You worry about animating the anticipation. And the more you build up the anticipation, then
the Jaws effect, like
the stronger that the action is, then when you finally animate it, and often it will take only like 1 or 2 frames to animate it because you've spent so much time on this, building. You know, like this slow building anticipation, and that's Osha's story. It's all this, you know, she's been a damsel this whole time. It's all, you know, every opportunity she's had to break away from that, she has not done it. And so it's just building and building and building and building. And then ultimately, if she's confronted with the whole everything you ever believed is a lie, like that's going to mess her up. She's going to lurch very strong in the opposite direction.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because she's not equipped. She has not been equipped.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
She has no defenses.
Really?
No, she doesn't know who she is. She has no defenses. She can't do anything on her own.
She's not good at blocking. We heard that out.
She's not good at blocking. Exactly.
Yep.
Right. So she is completely unprepared to deal with any sort of revelation on the scale of what she's probably going to get. Yeah. No, it's rough.
Jackie handcuffs May and gets Kelneka's lightsaber, which is so cool.
Also, May falls face first into the red dust, like Osha did.
Yeah, so like
that sort of foreshadows them switching places as well. Like, you know, this is like she's now arrived. Yeah, she's now arrived at the cellar where all the bodies are.
Exactly.
You know, same thing. Yeah.
The stranger approaches Jackie and they fight, and he's like, some of the choreography in this episode is breathtaking. Like this
really
fight
is.
with him is so cool, and like her use of the 2 lightsabers is so cool.
Oh,
and it really,
I loved it.
Loved it. I just want to bring back like the power of 1, the power of 2, the power of many. That's going to come back at some point.
Yep.
Right. So the power of 2 especially is going to come back. They're going to work together, May and Osha. Anyways, May, you can learn something from this Padawan. She is a loyal pupil, just like rubbing dirt into the wound. And he fights and bashes the Kelneka's saber and breaks it
momentarily.
Yeah,
momentarily. Yeah, and then so she has no. It's the other way around. So her saber shorts out. Jekki's saber shorts out. So she has to grab Kelnaka's saber to block. And then as she's blocking, her saber reignites. She gets this adorable little smirk on her face. And then she dual wields, and it's badass. And I love it. It was so fun to watch. And she's also, it's cool because she's using a front grip for her lightsaber, but she's using a reverse, or the other way around, whatever.
Yeah.
A reverse grip for the other lightsaber. So she's got this sort of like hybrid approach. It's like a little bit of Ahsoka, but not totally. It's just awesome. And I loved it very, very much. I will watch that again and again and again. It was cool.
Again and again. And Osha tells Yord to turn off his lightsaber because she's going to call the Ambramas. Okay, so this is the moment that she is as close as we get to her being a maiden for a hot second.
You're right.
Individuates. She grabs the light. This is all her idea. It is also all her idea to go back to Sol and Jekki and try and help. She grabs the Ambramas with her light. Light in both Star Wars and many media. And a small candle, a light represents your internal power. And it's small. And it's based in Pip, her love for others. It is representing of joy and compassion for others and wanting to protect others. She is taking in her own protector in this moment and bringing the shadow moths, the shadows, the darkness. She knows the darkness. This is like when she touched the darkness, she could sense the darkness. She was drawn to the darkness. She knows what the darkness is. Instinctually, that is the Force in Star Wars. So instinctually, or having an intuition with what to do, is the Force. And she draws the Ambramas to the fight as allies. She gathers her allies. So I argue she is a maiden. Momentarily.
For a minute.
Momentarily. She made a good choice. She knew what to do, and she trusted her own power and intuition.
You're right.
Thank you.
And then we contrast that with back to May, and she's fleeing through the forest, and there's this flash of the stranger going, "Coward, you were going to betray me."
Yes.
And she's all, "Forgive me, master, I was weak." And he says, "You've always been weak."
That was so mean.
And she kind of puts up her hands as if she expects him to kill her. And to be honest, it's interesting because I also expected him to kill her, but he doesn't. He just slices through her bonds. And that's very interesting because, again, it's on some level he needs her, on some level he respects her. It's like he wants a worthy adversary before he attempts to kill her.
Yeah.
Which was really interesting because he does. He
and
then
he was
goes
also
to,
super kind to her in the previous episodes in like trying to encourage her, even though he's this monster. So it's interesting. He is a chimera of sorts, ever changing and shape shifting, which is also an aspect of the Predator.
Yeah. And on some level, he does feel the betrayal quite deeply.
Yeah, because he's lonely.
Right, he's lonely. And this is important because, you know, in the Bluebeard story, often like when, he gives her the challenge of like the key, the temptation, because he hopes that she won't do it. He hopes that she will remain loyal to him. But what we discussed is that she needs to find the truth. It's important for her to learn the truth and to not remain in the dark and, and not become a full adult and to be a dependent and everything else. So she absolutely must, she must open the door. But when she does, he feels the betrayal and, says, well, now you must die. And so this is important because in his mind, she's at fault, because he was supporting her and giving her everything. And all he needed was loyalty. And she didn't give him that. And so he doesn't, he sees this as like her failing.
Absolutely. We have Jekki and Sol fight the stranger or chimera. with the 3 blades. So we have like the green and the blue and the red. And it's very powerful to have the 3 different colors kind of fighting all at once.
Yes.
And May kind of falls against a rock, and it's almost like she has like a moment, and then Osha hears little May. And of course, this is a maiden moment because she is listening to her intuition and her soul and the call of her heart. Right?
Yes.
So archetypically still in a maiden phase. I'm going to call them out until it's done.
Okay.
She uses her light. This is her intuition and her power in understanding the darkness that exists around her and in herself. So the Umbra Moths, and bores full bore into the dark forest. Death awaits her, and she is going to face it. And then we get to see the coolest moment and then the saddest moment where Chimera is able to pull the sword from his sword, a dagger, and block Jackie and stab her 3 times in a triangle formation.
Yes.
And everybody messaged me.
And I know. And she cracked his helmet, knocked it off.
So that unmasking of him.
Yeah, she unmasks him and then he kills her.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's the triangle, and it's...
He may not have killed her if he hadn't been unmasked.
Yeah.
That's kind of what he says later. He indicates that later. That like his secrecy, like, you can't crack the shell because to know me is to be my death, basically. And that's why, again, I feel like he is solo. Like, I do not feel like he has somebody to go back to.
Yeah, no, he doesn't.
He doesn't have a home. He is literally alone, and he is seeking somebody. He's seeking companionship and a pupil and an acolyte, because the consumptive force of the snake is seeking to eat its own tail. It always is craving the apotheosis and the alchemical union in the darkness, but it doesn't understand that wrapping and eating and eating and eating is not eating its own tail.
Yeah. So he constantly needs new prey, basically.
Exactly.
And so, yeah, but it's heartbreaking. And
so the triangle for you, were you shocked at the triangle?
I don't know if I was shocked. I was definitely like, because it serves multiple purposes. Like, it's a symbolic purpose, but it's also the like, oh, she can't survive that.
Yeah.
Like, they want to make certain when these characters die that you don't think it's a fake out.
Yes.
They
absolutely.
film them in such a way, they choreograph it in such a way where you understand they are dead when it happens. And that is key here. That's what creates the shock to a great degree, because we're accustomed to fake outs, right? In media. And you sent me an article today where they interview Leslie Headland and some of the cast about this. And she actually talks about that, about how, everyone expects these characters to just come back. And they make very clear in the episode, these characters are not coming back.
Yeah. And, people were asking me what this meant, have the death in a triangle. And I think it's that we don't expect this to go the way that we think. And also that somebody obviously listens to What the Force and knows I love triangles and put this in just for me.
And they were like, here, put this really macabre image into your thread, Marie Claire.
Marie Claire will get that this was for her.
Yes.
I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
No, I mean, it doesn't actually have that much of a meaning other than 3s are popping up everywhere in this episode. And that is important because we're saying we're given only binary choices, but all the road signs say that there's actually another choice.
And it's also, it's kind of the signal that this isn't a throwaway. This isn't just for shock value. It's intentional. It has a role to play in the story.
Yes.
Using that motif tells us, hey, the writers did this on purpose.
I have another theory about why it was a triangle. So it's a feminine triangle? No, it's the reverse.
Yes.
Is it feminine?
I don't remember.
So it was...
I think it's inverted. Point down?
I thought it was point up. Ooh.
Maybe, I don't remember. Well, I gotta look at an image.
So what does Jackie represent to Osha. Jackie is the perfect daughter she wanted to be for Soul. The perfect Padawan. The perfect Jedi that she thinks is what she wanted. Like, and in the heroine's journey especially, we're surrounded by this idea in how she talks about the journey and why we experience this like spiritual aridity is because we're told like be the perfect little angel, be patient, wait. Osha's been waiting for forever and nobody's told her it's now your chance to be a heroine. It's now your chance to be a Jedi. She's been waiting. She's been good. Be a good girl.
Yeah.
Jackie was the good girl that she had in her mind that she wanted to be. And that version of her had to die in front of her eyes, or at least no longer be available as somebody that she was projecting her inner child onto.
And also, it tells Osha that being the perfect girl will not save her from the predator. It does not protect her from the predator. Being perfect, doing everything right, doing what you're told, that doesn't protect you. And the same is true. I know we're going to get to this in a minute, but the same is true for Yord. Following all the rules did not protect him. No.
Yord also is her animus. And he dies to be replaced by a different animus temporarily, at least for now.
Yeah. Fascinating. She was a child.
She was a child. You brought her here. Oh my God, this moment. The reveal of the face, the whole moment with the things, and then he sees May and distraction, throws cloak. At Soul, grabs May into a force choke, and then Soul like attacks him while his back is turned. As you attack me while your back is turned? Not very Jedi of you.
Yeah.
I
want to get into this briefly, though. I do want to get into this manual stranglehold that he uses on May. So this is a Darksider shorthand for Predator.
Yes, absolutely.
Because like one of the ways that we knew that Darth Vader was a bad guy the first time he was ever introduced is he choked a guy out on screen. Okay?
Yeah.
And then one of the ways that we know that Anakin has finally fallen to the dark side is when he uses force choke on his wife. Right?
And when we see that he's willing to like burn that relationship with May and not repair it, even though he was like so Bluebeard kind in last episode, is because he's willing to literally like kill her in that moment, potentially.
Right. But this is also important too, because it is pulling on what we know about the world we live in and about patriarchy and misogyny and all of this, because this is a primary form of intimate violence in the real world of, again, patriarchal powers against femme powers. This is very common, the way that this is deployed. And it is deployed for control. And, so
it is
again,
dark. Like this episode
very
is
dark.
Thematically very dark.
Yes.
Manny
really is
incredibly hot.
Oh, he's so good. He's so good. Like his performance is amazing. And he continues to have
And it's going to be sexy. It's going to be dark. Those things can coexist. And I just want to bring us back momentarily to Leslie Headland writing Russian Doll and having Ruth Brenner say, the ability to have two opposite ideas in your head at the same time and know both to be true is the best of being human. And Leslie is telling us this is a very bad man and you're also going to be attracted to him.
Right. And both of those things can be true and you don't need to reconcile them.
You don't.
Because they're both true.
They are both true. And you don't need to feel bad for being attracted to him as well as thinking he is a very bad man.
Yes.
He's a very bad man.
Yep.
He kills without thought.
Yes.
He killed Jackie.
Yep.
Boo.
Boo. Boo.
Soul, what are you? I have no name, but a Jedi like you might call me Sith. Why risk discovery? What? I did wear a mask.
Yeah, I love that. Well, and see those kind of moments, like the you brought her here, and well, I did wear a mask, and then later, I think when he sees Osha, and he's like, "Oh hi, hello,
hello."
Yeah, like he does this where he continues to shift between his
Chimerian
multiple personas.
Chimera?
Yes, chimeric.
Yeah. and also like he is a shapeshifter as a predator as well. That's also just like really important. So you think of like Dracula, he can turn into a bat or a wolf, or the werewolf as a predator. He can turn into a human, right? Well, yeah, he's got a human face as a mask.
Yes. Yeah. So it's fascinating to watch him do that. He'll just kind of like fluidly shift between these different personas. And it's really cool to watch him do that. Because he's so terrifying and he's so threatening. He's just really pulls that off very, very well. He's extremely dangerous, obviously. And then he is also attractive because he's also teasing and
I also
flirtatious.
Feel pity for him because he's so incredibly lonely.
Very,
you can sense that, and so there's some pity I have for him, but I also can recognize all of these things can be true.
Right.
What do you want? Freedom. He kicks the hell out of May's leg.
Yeah,
like that was a hard kick to make her kneel without having to answer to a Jedi like you. And then he goes on to talk about
the freedom to wield my power.
Oh, yeah, wield my power.
It interested me the way that these lines here sounded a lot like Mother Anastasia.
Oh, yeah. Like, does it feel like he was learning from them, or like he was because like he learned some things, obviously, right? There's some things that they know that he knows. So, I mean, I hope we find out exactly, because I'm sure we will. I'm sure he was there because he was on the poster.
Yeah, we're going to have some kind of relationship to them. Clearly, I just don't know what it's going to be.
He's 38.
Yeah.
16 years minus 38. Who was a solid 22-year-old? Did I bring that up in a previous episode?
I don't remember.
I know we had talked about it, but I want a pupil, an acolyte, and his eyes look pleading.
Yes.
So this is like the desire for creation that the dark side has, that they're unable to create because they're always consuming. And they want to like basically be able to have companionship and create something new. But because you're a villain stuck in the underworld, you're a dark, sad boy, you're unable to see that you need to experience an apotheosis and accept your darkness. I know he says he accepted his darkness, but he hasn't.
No, he hasn't.
He is wrapping his darkness around him like a cloak, like a shield.
Yes.
And being stuck in the underworld. He is stuck in the darkness. That is a difference. So he is addicted to the darkness. He's addicted to the power that he has. He's addicted to what it means, because it's all about survival for Chimere. He is absolutely... I mean, we haven't put an archetype on him because I don't think we know yet. But he gives maybe sorceress vibes, maybe vixen. I think we need more time with him.
I think, he could also be bully. Maybe. We'll see. I think we need more information. But like what we know is that he's very much the aggressive archetype. And the aggressive archetypes are deeply defensive. Deeply defensive. They
defend. And he might be a sorceress because of the queen. Like he wants to have a pupil. He wants to have somebody to be with him.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because, when he thought that May was loyal to him, he was very protective of her. And so that is very much a sorceress
in the queen
position.
Life stage.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's queen is like also associated with mother. So it's like a family, building a home, building a community, etc. But the dark aspects, the negative shadow aspects of that archetype either come off as aggressive, so sorceress, right? So an aggressive version of a mother, or a passive one who is a snow queen, builds castles to protect what they love.
Yeah, right, exactly. And the example I always give of the sorceress is Scarlet Witch.
Right.
In Multiverse or Madness, or even in WandaVision to an extent.
Yeah.
Because she is willing to aggressively murder people in order to protect her family.
Yep.
So
that's a really good example. And so he's trying to build a family of sorts, right? It is a family. It is a union.
It is. To him,
right?
it is.
To him, it is, right? He's alone. And so, I think he is in this archetype. Hey, we talked ourselves into it. Great.
Yeah. Sorceress. Done.
Sorceress.
All
done.
right.
Check. We'll talk about sorcerers next time. Yord
No, wait. She exposed me. So now I have to kill every single last one of you. I don't make the rules. The Jedi do. And the Jedi say I can't exist. They see my face. They all die.
Wow.
So this is really important because once again, he's turning a mirror back on the Jedi.
Deflecting.
And what he's saying is true.
Yeah.
Again, the Jedi, rather than deal with this out in the open, are, hiding what's happening. They are, trying to be like, oh, this problem doesn't exist. It's not really there. I don't know if they know that it's a so-called Sith or not, but whatever they know, they don't feel like sharing with anyone. And so, they doomed these people that they sent there because they were not honest and transparent about the threat and what was happening.
And
so he's right.
It's, it's very much like Robert Bly's idea of the onion shadow, where if you ignore the shadow, it grows.
Yep.
And it grows in power and it becomes more smelly and it becomes harder to ignore.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Because they tried to deny the existence of the dark and the power of the dark, it became so powerful that it eventually consumed this whole group of people.
Yord and Osha arrive.
Mm-hmm.
And this leads to Yord's death, which is brutal.
It's so upsetting.
This, of course, is the death of her animus because she is right there to witness it.
Yeah. That one I definitely gasped at. I know I said that already, but I did. I jumped and I gasped. I was like, oh my gosh. I was like, what happened? I didn't see that coming at all. So I was pretty shocked.
May has run away. And we get hand to hand with Sol, who is so badass. This is literally so brutal. He matches Chimere in how defensive he is of Osha.
And the hand-to-hand brutality of it. His he's already tossed his lightsaber aside at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And so he just loses it and just goes all out.
The kick.
Yes.
And then pulling the lightsaber and willing to kill.
With the intent to kill. Absolutely.
With the intent to kill. And Osha stops him. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
How did that make you feel?
I loved seeing a character like Sol, who was kind of the ideal Jedi Master in many ways.
Mm-hmm.
And I've actually heard him compared to Qui-Gon a couple times, And so having this kind of sweet girl dad guy
go nuts, basically.
Yeah. Just go apeshit, frankly. Just go completely loses it. And attack in this way. I thought it was very satisfying to see a very noble character completely drop the facade, just be unable to control their emotions and to respond this way. And it's particularly important because of the fact that, on the one hand, I would like to see more grief in Star Wars. And on the other hand, for people who are always claiming that they accept death and it's an honor to see anyone transform into the Force and blah, 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 to see that they're very human and that they do react in this way to, this horrible, horrible death. I thought it was really important for Star Wars to show that.
That there's something in, although Osha and Chimere haven't had that much time together, there's something in her choosing to protect him. And I don't know what it means yet, but I have thoughts. And I wrote that
I also think
THOOTS.
Thoughts.
because of the sort of seductive way that they had their first scene together. I think that there's something in that is just trying to be laying the groundwork for, but it's very, very subtle. So we'll see if it plays out.
We'll see. I also think, keep in mind that Sol and Chimere are mirror images of one another.
Yeah. So we get this very brutal moment, right, where she stops him and Chimere's like, Osha, hello. So this is your master after everything he did to you. Okay, so let's talk about the bride price.
I'm so glad you brought this up.
You saw it in my notes.
Okay, I did.
So at some point, the predator demands his bride.
Yeah.
And this is what's happening. He is basically saying, come over to me, little girl. Come over to me. And the family, the father, the parents, the community can't pay the price that is the cost to keep the bride. And so they offer her to the predator. It's crazy. So the emotional weight of the revelation of this dark secret, this lie that everybody is telling themselves, including Soul, is too much to pay. And so everyone's willing to just give Osha to the darkness.
Apparently. Well, that's what happens functionally. Yeah.
And Chimere says, I have accepted my darkness. What have you done with yours? This dude is the judo master of emotional deflection.
He really is. He really is.
Osha, still in her maiden phase, calling the shadows to her will, using the darkness to her benefit, uses the light, says, I love you, Pip, and puts the flashlight into his back straps of his outfit, of course, Chimeras, and the group of Umbra moths descend onto Chimere. And he pulls out his lightsaber, which just makes it worse, and he cuts down some, but he can't. There are too many shadows. There's too many shadows in the darkness. As a villain in the underworld, there's too many shadows for him to face.
Yep.
What's really cool in the episode guide, they called a group of Umbra moths an Eclipse.
Of course they did.
Because they know what they're doing.
Yeah, and they listen to your show.
Maybe.
I'm kidding. Or am I?
I love you guys. You're doing great stuff. The Umbra moths are called an Eclipse. Of course, who cast shadow. And in the moment, they cover up and descend and cover up and protect those around them. So cool.
Yeah. So they carry him away. And then Osha gets down to business pretty much immediately and says, why did he say I shouldn't trust you? What did you do? And once again, it's, oh, please, Osha, I'll explain.
And this, as the sun rises. Yep.
And May stuns him because he can't share that secret yet.
Nope. And also May is just like wanting to get her sister back away from this crazy Jedi guy.
Right. Of course. Yeah. Of course. Well, I meant like narratively he can't share that secret yet. But for her, it's just like, I want to talk to my sister. So at sunrise, the sisters meet in a clearing. May drops the blaster to signal that she's not a threat.
It's a bridge.
That's right. It's
a natural bridge of like stone. So bridges, of course, represent communication. Yes. The fact that they're willing to meet. So, it's like, it's the version of a world between worlds in a way.
And they were on a broken bridge in the flashback.
Exactly.
So like
this
is
is a neutral bridge.
Sense.
This is them healing, etc. May says, she's like, they confront each other. Actually, I don't have written down what Osha says to start, but
so it's basically May's just happy to see her, and then basically suggests that she has freed Osha from from the Jedi, and that's when Osha says, those Jedi were more my family than you ever were, which of course is so painful.
It is.
And not true.
I did what I needed to do for you, for our family. And so this is like really nailing in the point that being a vixen is all about survival.
Yep.
And once you're able to move, past the point of survival, i.e. you find safety or you find community or you find, being re-embraced by community, you can't be in a positive growth movement if you're always worried about running or surviving or starving. It's impossible.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it's not her fault. Like I really like Star Wars is about redemption, but Star Wars is also about understanding that these fictional lenses are there to understand that if you are in a situation where you haven't been able to do the right thing for a really long time, it's actually because, look, the situation is causing you just to be in a survival mode.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And she was alone, you know, Osha was carried away by people who would care for her. May was alone. So May did what she had to survive. And so she responds to Osha, you know, have you forgotten who we are, where we come from? They invaded our home. And she responds, you know, no, May, you're the violent one.
Right.
And this is where she starts to look kind of teary and says
she looks so much like the May child. Like they did.
Yes, very much. Like, they did an amazing job.
Amanda did an amazing job of playing both characters. Like, holy crap.
It's really clear and distinctive which one you're looking at any given moment, which is amazing. Like, that's really incredible. But yeah, they've brainwashed you. They've turned you against me. It sounds like Anakin again.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, you know, like, you've turned her against me, da-da-da. Like, this, they're doing this on purpose. They're pulling on this on purpose. They want us to think of that. They want us to think of the brotherly relationship between Obi-Wan and Anakin, just like we now have the sister relationship between these two.
Star Wars, it rhymes. Well, it's pulling on the tropes that we already know, right? So by this point, Osha and May have both been stripped of everything that they thought they knew. Right? And so they embrace, which is, of course, the meeting of the goddess. It ties back to the myth of Ereshkigal and Inanna. They embrace, which is an alchemical union. And May says, don't choose them again. Please choose me. Choose us. We both survived.
And she also says, I love you again. So we got another I love you in this show.
Oh. Yeah, don't choose a life without purpose, without family, without love. Oh my God, this hurts. This like stabs me in the heart.
It does hurt.
And then, you know, Osha's like, they were more of a family than you ever were. And so May knocks her out and strips her of her ego, her persona, this civilian Jedi, this you're not even allowed to be a Jedi garment, and dresses in a mask. But essentially, Osha is stripped and born anew. That is because she's passed out, so it's like it's symbolic death. So this is what has happened. She's experienced an alchemical union and thus has died.
And that's Inanna too, because Inanna is stripped of everything.
When she descends, meets Ereshkigal, has pity for Ereshkigal, hugs her, loves her, dies in the process, and then is reborn.
Right.
Anew. Right. And discovers that the relationships that she had trusted with her lover were not valuable, and tries to find and kills him and gets a new lover.
Yep. Yeah.
Soul.
I know. So yeah. Soul. So
she cuts her hair.
She cuts the braids. We know it's important symbolic moment. But that's also the moment that we realize, oh crap, she's going to take her place. Like, you know, the second that happens, you're like, that's where they're going with this. And so then Kainai, he manages to shred/escape the moths. He escapes more or less unharmed. Basil finds Pip's head, and he's a tracker, so he's going to know that May is not Osha.
Yeah. I also wonder if Soul doesn't have a feeling as well, because he he shows up and he's like, where's your sister? Instead of where's May, which he's never said your sister, hardly ever.
Times,
May is in
often.
Osha's clothing, but he senses something. And then she says, let's go. Let's head to the
and
ship.
Again, she does such a good job because it's like she comes in with that like swagger, you know? So even the way she walks is May, even though she's in Osha's clothing. So it's really well done. As they return to the ship, the locals are playing a game. Several pieces are removed from the board as these characters step up. It's very upsetting.
Oh my gosh.
They are resetting the board.
I didn't even see that. And this ties to something that Manny said, which is like, this very much sets us up for the third act of the show. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness.
So that was purposeful.
So we have Basil sniffing and following and coming with them on the ship. They're heading to the ship. We're like, oh no, what is May going to do? I actually just think they're going to have a chat.
I agree. Well, I think she may go all the way back to Coruscant with him. It's possible.
Theoretically,
it's possible.
Chimere finds Osha stripped, as naked as she's going to be in a show of Star Wars, symbolically dead. What extraordinary beings we are. And he leans down and he touches, raises his hand over her wound. It heals. We can see it. It is healing.
Yep.
Even in the revelations of our triumph, you see the depths of our despair. He covers her with his cloak. And so to me, this represents that he has the knowledge to heal her fully.
Well, but it's interesting to me because we've only seen healing one other time, and that was not a dark side ability. So it's very interesting to me that this is a dark side ability in this story.
There is a musical motif that plays during this moment, but did you want to talk about the cloak first?
I want to talk about the cloak first, just because this is, I know, an important one that many astute listeners have already
I love you guys. You guys are talking about the cloak. I was like,
well done. Yes. So if you haven't listened to us before, this is something we talk about very often. Clothing the
bride,
the bride, the lover, clothing the lover in the clothes of your world, of your own world, is claiming them. That is how you claim that. You claim the bride for your world. So that is what he is doing. He is claiming this new bride for his world. And ultimately, she will have to choose. She has a few different options. She can choose to keep what he gives her, and that means that she will continue serving him. She can choose to reject what he gives her, which means that she will not continue serving him. She will break away from him. And now there's a third option, actually, which is that she takes what he gave her and somehow or other makes it her own. And in that sense, she no longer serves him.
But she has accepted what he represents.
Yes. But she is carrying the lessons she learned from him with her. So I am anticipating some form of door number 3.
I mean, 3s are so big nowadays.
Yes, I know.
3s are the new 2s.
Yeah. 3s are so hot right now.
So I actually wanted to play it. I want to play it from the episode. I want to play the musical motif, and then we can talk about
Please do.
For a quick moment here. Are you ready?
What extraordinary beings we are.
That's when the healing happens. It is Kylo.
I didn't notice.
It is Kylo Ren's theme, which is also associated with the First Order.
Wow.
So this is why I need to talk about it. So I tweeted about this on Twitter, of course, because people were freaking out what it means, all of these different things. So after consulting with my musical episode, after consulting with my musical experts, including Frank Lehman's musical motific dictionary, as well as checking briefly with Christy Carew, the notes themselves are all the same. The rhythm is different. It's perhaps slower and more raw. It's closer than the incidental motif we often hear in The Mandalorian. And so if you listen to my Mandalorian musical episodes, there's a foreboding motif that is very similar that we hear often when ships are landing or when Grogu slightly touches the dark side. It is repeated twice. So we actually heard it one time earlier on in the episode. But this play actually has brass associated with it, but it's still not the full orchestra playing it. So this means this is an expansion of Kylo's theme, which is also associated with the First Order. Kylo's theme is used for the First Order. This is his sad one a little bit. But the Imperial March is also used for Vader, right? This is the problem with Kylo's theme is that it's so close to just the motific language of the dark side that it's really hard to tell the difference when it's being used. But this is absolutely a play of Kylo Ren's theme.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about
it was really distinctive
notes. 4 notes. That is it. And Reylos were like, what the hell? Right? Okay.
Not for nothing, we spent like half a decade listening to that.
Yeah. So this is the menacing motif. It is derivative of the First Order motif. It is connected to, of course, Rey's theme as well as Palpatine's theme. That's just because, dark side motific language. Okay. I have this. I think that the Knights of Ren theory might have some validity, or it could also be giving us sad, angry frown prince.
Yes.
Right? So it's giving sad, angry frown prince. No, it's giving us like maybe there's something more to this character than we are seeing that could be explored in other seasons, and they are laying the groundwork for that. In this season, he will be the predator and he will be overcome, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it won't be necessarily something opened up. He heals her, he protects her, there are things.
Yeah. So it's going to be interesting to see. She is going to need to overcome him for sure. But what that means and what that looks like remains to be seen. I currently suspect that we will end up with a Darth Maul sort of situation. So Maul was mythically dead and in the underworld for a very, very, very long time.
Licking his wounds.
Yes, exactly. And
in some ways, Kylo died in TFA too, because he was sliced in the face. And
I think, but the difference there is that his sort of death was the death of his mask and the death of his persona, whereas Maul is Maul, right? Yeah. And when he dies, And so I feel like there's more similarity with Maul when it comes to Chimere because, excuse me, Maul then disassociates himself from the Sith. He's no longer a Sith once that happens, right? Yep. He doesn't he's not Darth Maul anymore. No, he's just Maul. He's just Maul. And so I feel like to the extent that Chimere maybe is a Vixen himself, it's in that he views himself as a response to the Jedi and a reaction to the Jedi. He does not actually know who he is outside of his opposition to the Jedi. So if he were to mythically die at the end of this season, but remain alive in body, more or less.
Yeah, and return from the underworld, theoretically.
Yes.
Kind of like how Ventress died.
Right.
Right.
He would be freed from his sort of dependence on the Jedi in a sense. Because he's not a Sith anymore. He's not defined by his opposition to them.
He is a third option.
Yes, he is something else. Exactly. So that's where I think we're headed. And with regard to our heroines, such that you can call them that, our 2 leading ladies, I think they're going to have a moment of coming together. And then I think
you'll go apart again.
Yeah. And I think Osha will end the season dark.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah, I think May's going to come to the light and Osha's going to be in the dark, which is basically what you said from the beginning.
Or Osha might go completely dark and then they get together, it saves them, but they go separate ways after.
Yeah. I mean, they're going to need to come together for some reason.
Yeah.
To me, the big question is what is the broader threat, because everything is so intimate and on such a small scale. And what's not clear to me yet is what the sort of community or galaxy-wide threat will be, or if there even will be one. It's always
the home for the maidens, right? The threat is to the home. And so the home for May and Osha is the family idea, right? Which, of course, we've seen it destroyed, but it's the concept of family for both of them that is under threat by what is happening. The kingdom at large is always the job of heroes. And they're not quite there yet.
That's a good point. That's a good point. Yeah, you're right. They're still dealing with their own stuff. Interesting.
I think we'll get to the point where their like family stuff is resolved to some degree, but then we find out that there's something else out there.
That's true.
The kingdom.
Yeah.
I actually don't think that they're going to be like heroines until the end of this season.
I agree. I agree with that. Definitely. And I think also this is why Osha discovering the truth and discovering that she is not blameless and May is
not fully to blame.
Yes, exactly. That's so critical because nothing else will bring her back to her sister.
Yeah.
Nothing else will make her want to be in communion with her.
Yeah, she needs to discover that she was actually part of the problem.
Yeah,
I'm absolutely I'm the problem. It's me. Exactly. Yeah. Any final thoughts, Missy?
This was an amazing episode of Star Wars. In spite of the horrible losses that we experienced, I really loved it from a storytelling perspective. I really like what it says about where they're going with the remainder of the season. I think we got a really incredible villain in Chimera. I'm super happy about that. I liked seeing Saul become completely unhinged. Basically, I really liked that this episode, after so much restraint in all the previous, I thought a lot of the previous episodes were characterized by restraint. They let it all out in this episode. And that's a very cathartic. Yes,
it's a very
cathartic experience.
Yeah. I thought that this was some of the best Star Wars that we've seen in the fight. And like Leslie talked about how the producers were really worried when they saw the scripts about how much like would the people get bored with all the lightsaber fighting, and she's like, no.
No, you don't know Star Wars fans.
But I think part of it is if the fighting isn't tied to character, like it's battle of the soul stuff. Who's gonna win, Osha and May?
It matters who wins, firstly. And secondly, having major characters die creates very high stakes.
Yes.
And again, I know that people get upset because of the idea, well, it was just for shock value. I mean, it wasn't just for shock value, but the shock value helps because...
Yeah, well, we care. We care about what happened.
You care. You're invested. It matters. It matters that the characters you love are gone.
Yeah.
So I thought it was taking these tropes that we've seen and these motifs and using them very deliberately, very intelligently. And I love that kind of filmmaking, and I love it in Star Wars.
I like it when everything is thoughtful and literally everything is thought out.
Yeah.
Like it's wild. I just, I'm obsessed with this show, this, 35 minutes or whatever amount of minutes of television. I think I told you, like, we talked about last episode how it would be cool to watch these back to back, Yeah. And so my kids hadn't had a chance to actually see it, and they watched them back to back.
Interesting.
And their experience was they haven't stopped talking about it.
I love it.
Like they love this show, and they were like, this was the most intense piece of television. Robin keeps on sending me hot girl rat boy memes.
Oh my God. That's amazing.
It's a joy to experience Star Wars with my kids and have it be Star Wars that's like challenging to them as well as high stakes.
And speaking of watching things back to back, what I'm really excited about is for when this season ends, similar to how when Andor ended, even though we still have another season to go of Andor, when Andor ended, I was like, gotta go watch Rogue One right now. When this season is over, I am pretty sure that I'm going to be immediately like, gotta go watch Phantom Menace right now, which is why it makes sense to me that they released the sneak peek on the beginning of the Phantom Menace re-release last month. That makes perfect sense, right? Because it is explaining how you get there. It is showing how you get there, and it's doing it in a way that feels personal and impactful, and that you care about the outcomes for the characters, and it matters for the galaxy, and that's another aspect of this that has me excited. Is on the one hand, it has enough distance from the rest of Star Wars for me to be like, cool, I can enjoy this on its own. And on the other hand, I think it's going to make the experience of the prequels richer, and I'm excited for that.
And apparently George Lucas was too subtle about how the Jedi became, dogmatic and fell apart.
Yeah.
So we got to have a more textual reminder.
Yeah.
That, the organization was not in a good place when Anakin was around.
Yeah. Yeah. The Jedi are flawed. And if you didn't believe George, maybe you'll believe Leslie.
Yeah. Maybe you'll believe Leslie, because look at all these Jedi that died in the darkness.
I know.
Who will never be told. No one will ever know that they died by a red blade's blade.
Yep. Yeah.
Isn't that more sad?
They left Jecki and Yord's bodies there. I was pissed, to be completely honest.
Soul is in a bad place.
Yeah. I was just like, really? You just left them?
Ugh.
Yeah. No.
So the next couple of weeks are going to be a little bit weird for timing. I am going on vacation and bringing my stuff with me, but you're also a little bit on vacation because of,
holidays in the US.
And things like that. So we're going to record when we can figure it out. And we will be with you, and it will be worth the wait if you have to wait. And it also might take me an extra couple of hours to respond to your questions or to your comments. But I love you all. And it has been an amazing journey so far. And I'm so happy to see that you are jiving with what we are doing. And we appreciate all of the questions and comments. And if I have time while waiting for my flight, I will be answering the ones on Twitter, especially that we didn't get to. So this is my appreciation. I'm sending you many, many hearts virtually over the air. And if you want to ask questions to Missy, find her on Tumblr or
I'm on Tumblr. Yes. I keep a low profile on Blue Sky, but you can find me there. I'm shouting about the show a lot. So, but yes, on Tumblr, I am All Girls Are Princesses. Please do reach out there.
Thank you, everyone, and cheers. Thank you for listening to What the Force. I'm Marie-Claire Gould, your host. Our music is orchestral music by Christy Carew for What the Force. You can support the show directly on Patreon at patreon.com/whattheforce. We'd like to thank all our patrons, especially those who love What the Force: Sophie H., Derek C., Minky Moo, Sarah Joy, John, In Wild Space, How Rude, Anna Perez, Neil, Christian Luca, Carly Ann, Scott C., and Susan. Support the show by wearing the Force with our merch. Like and subscribe on YouTube or leave a 5-star review on iTunes or other pod apps. It helps people find the show. You can connect with us on Twitter at WT Force Show, What the Force Podcast on Facebook, our website, whattheforce.ca, or our Discord. Links are in the liner notes. Reach out and start a conversation. Cheers.